Mr. Thakur, what I want to address here with you specifically on this issue, and I think that's something that both Prashant and you were talking about. You know, one, of course, is compliance with good manufacturing practices as far as the manufacturing facilities are concerned. The other, specific to this challenge, this scourge of DEG poisoning, seems to be one of supply chain regulation. Now, how much of a lacuna, how much of a vacuum do we find ourselves when we talk about supply chain regulation specific to the pharma industry? Mr. Thakur.
So you cannot separate out supply chain regulation from good manufacturing practices, right? For example, GMP says that when you get raw materials delivered to you, which you use in your manufacturing, you do your testing. You know, you make sure that the raw materials that you're getting are of a certain purity, certain standard, right? 9 out of 10 times when we run into situations of this nature, we find out that you know, the company that actually has made adulterated product, substandard product, they have not tested it properly. That is GMP, right? I mean, my heart goes out to this, you know, this parents of the 66 children, that someone will have to explain to them that the reason why they had poison in their cough syrup was because some company decided not to test the raw materials. How do you do that? It's as simple as that. And that is what GMP is. GMP basically says that you follow these set of standards and practices. Unfortunately, you know, our regulations and our compliance is horrible when it comes to this.
Yeah, one, of course, is the law itself, and the other is the enforcement with standards and regulation, two different things entirely. You may have laws on the book, you may have regulations on the book, but then enforcement is a different story altogether. And Prashant, that's where I want to come back again to state capacity specifically. As Ekta was pointing out, you know, over 3,000 pharmaceutical companies, that's the number that we have, over 10,000 manufacturing facilities. Do we even have the capacity, especially at the state level, to be able to enforce?
Oh, no. That's the simple answer. We don't have it. And it also varies across states. So one of the findings of this book is that some of the southern states actually do a pretty good job. Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Kerala especially. At least they test and they do try to prosecute few of these guys. But in a lot of other states, the state of, you know, the testing laboratories is just shocking. Like Bihar just doesn't have the basic testing equipment. And that's a state of more than 100 million people. Similarly, Himachal Pradesh, which is the hub of manufacturing, pharma manufacturing in India, because the government has given them an excise-free zone over there. The lab in that, they have only one testing lab, the state government. And when we filed an RTI application asking them about what kind of tests they were doing, it turns out that they weren't doing some of the most basic tests. So that's the problem. If, as long as we leave it to state governments, we are going to have this, you know, differentiated system of regulation across the country. The only way we can try and fix this is by trying and centralizing regulation. In most countries in the world, if there is a common market where drugs can flow from one state or one province to another, there will be a common federal regulator which is setting standards and enforcing the law. And also, let's remember that the central government generally has a lot more money to spend on drug regulation. For state governments, drug regulation comes right at the bottom of its list of priorities.
Okay. Mr. Reddy, you know, I think you would be best placed to talk about the fact that what exactly is the stringent punishment or the punishment that exists right now if in case there is a substandard or spurious drug found by your company per se in India. According to what I've learned, it's around 10 years of imprisonment and a 10 lakh rupee fine. One, do you think that it is imposed? And two, is that the case? And what is the sense from a legal perspective? Does that needs to become more stringent? Does that need to have more teeth in order to create more fear in the system for compliance?
See, well, for cases like adulterated drugs, such as this particular case, which would qualify as an adulterated drug in Indian law, in 2008, the law was amended to allow even for life in prison for people found responsible for manufacturing adulterated drugs. But the bulk of the quality problem in India is substandard drugs, right? So these are drugs which may not kill you, but which may not work and hence have an adverse effect on your health. So for those kind of cases, the law is actually quite lenient. It says minimum 1 year imprisonment, maximum 2 years. But what we discovered, and this was absolutely stunning, that in several states, including in Karnataka, Maharashtra, and Tamil Nadu, where drug inspectors do prosecute these cases quite vigorously, even when companies are found guilty or when they plead guilty, the common sentence given by judicial magistrates is simple imprisonment till the rising of the court and a fine of about 20,000, 40,000 rupees. Now, simple imprisonment till the rising of the court sounds exactly like what it means. That is, if the judge gets up for lunch, you're free to go home after you pay your fine. So we are treating the pharma industry with kid gloves. It's just shocking that this hasn't gotten more attention in the past, which is why, unfortunately, these kids in Gambia are paying the price for our country's incompetence.
Yeah, that is, it is unfortunate. It is tragic. It really is a travesty that we've seen fatalities continue, not just in India, but in the world as well. Of course, in your book, you talk about the many instances of DEG poisoning. 1937 in the US is where it started. South Africa, 1969. Nigeria, 1990. Again, 2008. Bangladesh, 1990 to 1992. Argentina, 1992. Haiti, 1996. Panama, 2007. But India, we've seen DEG poisoning cases from 1972 all the way to 2025 cases of mass poisoning of a DEG. But Mr. Thakur, let me come back to you now and address this very issue that Prashant was talking about. In the last case of DEG contamination, DEG poisoning, the Jammu incident that we talked about, the company in question, as per the data put together in your book, there were more than a dozen violations that were flagged by regulators at the state level. Different states, not the state regulator in question. Even in this case of this company in question, there have been other state regulators that have red flagged this company in question. And yet, there doesn't seem to be any action. You filed an RTI as well to try and understand where the regulatory process seems to be. No response?
Well, I mean, as Prashant said, right, getting either the state drug regulator or the central regulator to act in a transparent manner is like pulling teeth. It never happens. We found 13 instances of this company being cited for making not or standard quality drugs in the government's own data. There was a journalist report that actually found 19 of them. And because, as you know, government data is incomplete, only 3 states report to the national database. There were 19 instances where this company was found to be manufacturing not of standard quality drugs. But that didn't stop the government from the Himachal Pradesh drug controller from yanking out their manufacturing licenses, right, before they made this poisonous syrup being administered to young kids. Not just that, it's been 2 years, as Ekta said, right? It's been over 2 years right now. What is the consequence? I mean, you can always blame the judicial system to say, look, our courts languish, because we don't prosecute in a timely manner. But the evidence here is it's black and white as it gets, right? It's a question of intent. It's a question of the drug regulator acting on behalf of public health rather than promoting ease of doing business. Unfortunately, that's what our drug regulators do today. They talk about ease of doing business rather than protecting public health, and so nothing changes. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you this. I mean, you're doing a great program today. A few days from now, a week from now, this is going to be off the air. Everybody's going to forget about it, and we'll go back and do their own thing. Medicine regulation is not anybody's priority, and unless there is political will to try and change the system, nothing will change. That was the reason why we wrote this book. We wanted to get this data in front of lay people of the country.
Yeah, I agree with what you say, Dinesh Thakur, but, here at CNBC-TV18, as you know, we've been running Bad Medicine, putting the spotlight on some of these issues for the last several years. And, of course, Ekta does a weekly called The Medicine Box, which also puts the spotlight on some of these issues. But, we do hope that, and at this point in time, for the benefit of our viewers, all we know is that the Indian regulator, the Indian drug regulator and the state regulator are now probing this issue, or looking into the issue of Maiden Pharma. What we're given to understand at this point in time, and there is no conclusive sort of statement from either the company or from the government or the regulator to say that these cough syrups have not been administered in the Indian market. What we're given to understand that they are unlikely to have been available in the Indian market. The WHO, of course, in its press release has said that so far the identified drugs have been identified in Gambia, but through informal routes, they may have found their way into other markets. So they have asked regulators around the world to pull these drugs from the market if they do identify them. But that is where this story stands at this point in time. We will, of course, keep you updated on how things develop. Dinesh.S.Thakur, Prashant Reddy, thanks very much for joining us here on this conversation. As I said, it's an awful coincidence. I wish we didn't have to talk about this as we talk about your book, but thanks very much for joining us here today. That's it then on this special edition of The Bad Medicine. We will see you again shortly. Till then, from all of us here on CNBC-TV18, goodbye. Thanks for watching.